In the first two parts, we've seen a lot of new notation. So let's recap. Here at the top, I have an integer array with 6 numbers in it. And in the blue box, I'm showing the sort of manual way for you to create this. You declare xpos as an int bracket bracket. That's an array of integers. Then you allocate the memory for it by saying xpos equals new int, and then we tell processing how many entries we want. In this case, we want 6. Then one by one, we fill in xpos sub 0, xpos sub 1, all the way through to xpos sub 5. In the magenta box, I'm showing the shortcut. If we know we want 6 entries and we know these are the 6, we can just list them between curly braces at the time we declare the array. Finally, in the yellow box, remember you can find out the length of any array by naming the array, following it with a period, and the word length. Here's the output of a little program where I have 2 arrays, and the arrays hold the horizontal position and radius of each circle. Let's look at the program. Here's the whole program. There's not that much to it. I declare an array of floats called xCenter, and I capitalize that because it's a global. And I already know the initial values, and so I just list them between the curly brackets. I also declare an array of radius, and I also know the initial values I want for that. Okay, there's a standard setup, no surprise. There's a void draw, background, and a fill. Here's the only interesting bit. For I equals 0, I is less than xCenter.length. That's the length of the array of centers. And for each entry, I draw an ellipse. Its horizontal location is xCenter sub I. That will be 0, 1, 2, and 3. They're all centered vertically. And then I have 2 times radius sub I. And again, 2 times radius sub I because I want a circle. Notice that I goes up to xCenter.length. I'm pretty much assuming here, when I use I in radius, that there's as many entries in radius as there are in xCenter. If radius didn't have enough entries, I would get an error. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to say that radius has only 2 entries. I'm going to get rid of that last comma 2. So I have 60, 30. So now radius only has 2 entries, 0 and 1. But I is going to go 0, 1, 2, and 3 because it's counting up to xCenter.length, which has the value 4. So what's going to happen? Let's run it. We get an error. Let's take a closer look at this. The error reads, array index out of bounds exception. So we'll get to that later. But really all that's telling us is you're asking for something that isn't there. Let's look at another program. This is just like the last one, except I have one new line called motion. And I'm assigning a number, sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative, to each of the 4 circles. And in my loop, for each circle, first thing I do is I add the value of motion sub I to xCenter sub I, which will move the circle horizontally by whatever the value is of motion sub I. And now here's a little test where I say if the circle is off to the left-hand side of the screen, or if the circle has fallen off the right-hand side of the screen, I change motion to be negative motion. So if motion was negative and we went off to the left, now motion is positive and the circle will move to the right and vice versa. And then I add some of that motion back into xCenter to move it back on the screen. Well, let's actually run this program and see what it does. Just as advertised, we're moving the center on every frame, and the circles are bouncing. They're not bouncing off of each other, but you can certainly add that. And we could have as many circles as we wanted. I'll just make the arrays a little bit bigger. So I'll tell you what, I'll put in some circles at just sort of random places, 330, 650, 641, maybe 220, 256. Why not? Now we have to add 3 more radiuses. So let's say 22, 33, and 44. And we have to give them some new motions. And these seem to be at like a nice range of numbers. They seem to be working out pretty well. So let's say 3.5 minus 1.8. I'm really just sort of typing random numbers. I'm not even looking at what I'm typing here. 4.2. So I've just added 3 entries to each of the 3 arrays. And now if I run this program Hey, I've got more circles. This is why arrays are so great. My code didn't change. I just stuck in some more numbers. And if I stick in more, I could have 100 circles moving back and forth. So arrays are great. If you have a whole lot of objects that have a similar kind of look or a similar kind of behavior, you can capture them with arrays and then just write simple code that does the same thing for every single object, but it uses different numbers because it uses whatever number is stored in the array. If you wanted to push this program a little bit further, you could make each circle have a different color. You could make it bounce off of maybe the top and bottom of the screen if it was moving vertically as well. You can make the circles bounce off of each other. The arrays have all the information you need to completely describe each circle and change it over time.